Welcome to the Trend Detection Podcast, powered by Siemens. And now your host, Niall Sullivan.
So hello and welcome to this episode, or the first of a few episodes, I think, of the Trend Detection Podcast. And we've got a really interesting conversation. We've got two people today, which is slightly unusual for us, but it's hopefully going to lead to a really good conversation. And we've got a couple of people from Engineers Without Borders. So I won't introduce the organisation. I'll let Emma and Jonathan do that in just a second. But we're going to dive into some really interesting topics around sustainability, engineering, global responsibility, and lots more as well. But if we just start with a couple of introductions, I think that'd be great. So Emma, if you wouldn't mind starting us off.
Hi Niall, and thank you so much for having us for this opportunity to have this conversation. So I'm Emma, I'm a Glaswegian, I live in Peckham in London with my wife, and I'm a chartered civil engineer with a decade of experience in design, construction sites in the water sector primarily, and today work with Engineers Without Borders UK advocating for globally responsible engineering.
And Jonathan.
Hey, great to be on here. Thanks for having us. I'm Jonathan Truslove. I'm the Education and Skills Lead at Engineers Without Borders UK, and I'm up in Glasgow, Scotland. And my role is to develop opportunities to learn about global responsibility in engineering and how to practice it, which includes research and development of our offerings and tools we deliver in engineering education and to professionals in industry. And my background's in civil engineering and international development. So I completed my PhD in 2020 at the University of Strathclyde, which was centred around rural communities in Malawi and the relationship between the rural communities and water supply infrastructure and the sustainability burden placed on them to maintain hand pump technology due to the drive to meet global and national water coverage targets.
Wow, fantastic. No, thank you for that. Really good intros. So I guess the really big question to start with is maybe if you could both, or all of you, just dive into what is Engineers Without Borders, and what do you do? What's your mission? Why do you exist?
So we're a charity, and we've existed since 2004. And to provide a bit of a flavour for why we exist, I think it's important to reflect on the role of engineering more broadly. So engineering shapes the world in which we all live, from getting up in the morning, having a shower, and that being connected to a centralised water system that's maintained and designed by engineers, to putting on the kettle and thinking about our energy use and how that comes from different places, or the things that we manufacture, or the built environment in which we live. And the public spaces that are designed and shaped is really recognising the role that engineering plays in really designing and shaping the world in which we all live. So it's a really important profession, and I think in our day-to-day there's so much engineering, and at Engineers Without Borders UK we put our efforts into reshaping engineering to help create a safe and just future for all. With any profession, you always need that critical reflection on, is it really working as best as possible for today's needs? And because, society has this relationship with engineering, we're inherently connected in terms of the challenges of our age. Engineering contributes to them. It also helps address them because we rely on that group of people who help shape our environment and help shape the world in which we live. It's really key for the people within that profession to look at the needs of people today and help design our cities and our villages and our transport systems and our energy systems in creative ways, but also to deeply consider future generations in the face of climate, ecological emergencies and social injustice. So thinking about how important the people within engineering are, we looked at, or evidence has shown that actually, engineering contributes hugely in terms of whether or not humanity can respond effectively to climate emergency, biodiversity emergency, and social injustice. And we've seen loads of companies producing sustainability strategies and commitments to net zero and commitments to shift practices. But from engineering companies, the Institution of Engineering Technology did a survey in 2021 where they asked engineering companies with a sustainability strategy, do you think you've got the skills to meet it? And 93% of those companies said, no, we don't think we have the skills within our company. So this is where Engineers Without Borders UK's mission is paramount. We're an organisation that's set up to respond to the fact that we need to reshape engineering to ensure a safe and just future for all. Our mission is to put global responsibility at the heart of engineering. So thinking about sustainability, thinking about ethics, thinking about social responsibility, thinking about environmental impact of the work we do, really into the living and breathing in the day-to-day of engineering. That's our mission. And our aim is to upskill 250,000 people by 2030. And we do that by bringing together groups of people who are passionate and see the connection here between the challenges of our age and engineering, companies who have sustainability strategies and want to have the skills to meet it, organisations who are impacted, both good and bad, by the impacts of engineering, and coming together to really try and build a movement within this profession. And since 2011, so we've been around for 20 years in different forms. And since 2011, we've also had a really key role in helping shape the future professionals that are going to be working in practice. So over 70,000 undergraduates have participated in one of our programs, the Engineering for People Design Challenge. So we train educators and leaders and organisations really around building the capabilities of the people within engineering to best meet the needs of wider society and to continue to reflect and upskill themselves to do that as best as possible.
And I guess what I would draw about that, and I guess it's an important point that it doesn't just involve one group or one person or one organisation. It's actually a joint effort, lots of different stakeholders. So I just wanted to, how do you go about bringing those stakeholders together for this one mission? I mean, it's not an easy thing, I'd imagine, but it'd be interesting to dive into that. Jonathan, maybe you could comment on that.
Yeah, so I think we, as an organisation, we have a real focus on understanding global responsibility and helping work out what that means for engineering. But also we play a really key role in just joining the dots, joining between the university that needs something for their degree course and then our ability to tell the story of a community who live and work there. Like we kind of help tell that story and share it. So we kind of join the dots between the different actors involved. We're in strategic partnership with the Royal Academy of Engineering. We're also in strategic partnership with a number of companies. So we're able to almost be a bit of an interface here between different organizations and help, focus the attention on global responsibility in a range of different ways. But by working across sectors, across professions, but with a different range of audiences, we can really dive into what does this actually mean in all of these different contexts, rather than just saying, this is what it means for this one group of people, because it's a bit like health and safety in engineering. Everybody has a role in that. It's not just one person that's responsible for it. So by working with that range of actors and helping join the dots, we help, progress that as a bit of a kind of cultural shift within the profession.
And I guess the other thing I was thinking of with these different organisations, everyone will have contrasting goals, their own, whether it's financial goals or whatever, or sustainability goals. So how do you sort of align that into sort of one mission? Or I like that, what you were saying about being an interface. That's an interesting way to put it.
So I think narrative and words are really powerful, but actually so are definitions built on science and evidence. So we're always looking at that kind of piece. So I might throw it over to Jonathan just to kind of explore really what does sustainability mean to us, because I think sometimes even that definition can throw up a whole debate. So we try and be as accessible as possible to the different groups, whilst obviously basing ourselves in the science of our current situation.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I think Emma hits it on the head in terms of that narrative and that thread, because where we kind of touch on with our organisation is supporting future engineers and graduates who are entering the workplace as well as the professionals who are already there. So there's a continued thread between the higher education and the professionals who are already working. So we work with that kind of to embed global responsibility into how engineering is taught in practice. So there is that inherent connecting the dots, and that narrative and what's being communicated is really kind of key, where messages coming from industry, messages come from higher education, as well as understanding what global responsibility is understood by both groups. So for when it comes to sustainability as well, so the first thing that kind of comes to mind thinking about with sustainability in a definition is to defer to the Brundtland definition, which is from the United Nations Commission in 1987. And that's meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Like that's quite a well understood definition. But thinking about it kind of broadly and where we are now, like it's more than just a word or a concept. Sustainability is a culture and how we practice, how we design, particularly within engineering. And sometimes it's viewed more like that than what it looks like in practice. So I think we're starting to see the shift in the culture of engineering practice and education from the conventional approaches where it's mainly technology and technical driven and focusing on design, which is actually quite a siloed and degenerative approach to practicing engineering. And we're moving towards this sustainability, towards kind of net zero, towards carbon neutrality, taking kind of forefront in the narrative. But it's really to this balance of adding no additional harm, which is neither extractive, but neither is it regenerative or restorative in terms of looking at sustainability in that lens. So what I see sustainability being as is a stepping stone to almost the practices that we need to get to in the future. So rather than it being the overall end goal, it's a kind of bridge from where we need to go to next, where we move from sustainable development to regenerative development and design. And that's where we start considering like living in whole systems approaches, doing things as and with nature, where there's a positive impact instead of a neutral impact, governed by sustainability. So recognizing that there's been a negative impact due to the conventional and traditional consumptive approaches to engineering and engineering design, towards this more regenerative and positive impact on society and the planet. So that's where Engineers Without Borders UK, we have these kind of guiding principles around global responsibility so that these societal and environmental injustices are actively redressed. And that's where the kind of narrative between higher education and practice really is strengthened by that.
No, absolutely. And I think what I wanted to ask or contrast, and I don't want to make this an old versus young debate because there's certainly different opinions, whatever age. But is there more of a shift towards the mindset or more understanding of the mindset with younger graduates growing up, in this day and age, let's say, compared to maybe, let's say, the older generation, but for want of a better way to put it?
100%, yeah. So there's been a few studies, notably one of the ones we refer to was the Students' Organisations for Sustainability. They've done a lot of research and surveys from what students want to see within their own higher education. And the majority is coming out, we want to see more sustainability embed. We want to be able to understand and tackle like the context, the challenges that we will be facing in our future career. So I think there's a little bit of that, and there's a little bit of the shift towards actually understanding that these challenges will have to be addressed by engineers entering the workplace. Because historically, engineering education has been focused on graduates' ability to solve more technical problems. And whilst the value of technical skills in an increasingly tech-centered world should not be understated, the kind of narrowing focus on technical approaches alone has resulted in the exclusion of other critical factors that ultimately interplay with technical aspects of real-world engineering projects. So like understanding of ethics, understanding of the social context, interpersonal skills. So these are some of the ones that students and young people wanting to look at and cover in their engineering education degree would like to see within the curriculum. Because even when it comes to technical skills, like thanks to the rapid evolution of systems technology, education is struggling to keep up with the demands and the kind of context that we're going to be facing with this rapid acceleration of automation, digitization, AI, brought forward by the fourth industrial revolution. So it's quickly making many engineering skills obsolete, and it's changing the way that we work quite radically in terms of how we collaborate, how we communicate, extending across geographies, disciplines, and between humans and machines and technology itself. So we need to be able to prepare people studying engineering and practicing engineering with those kind of critical skills alongside the kind of technical skills to be able to cope with the context that they will be facing in their degree. And I think as well with the current context as well, over the last 10 years, we have to acknowledge that there has been rapid change. Like there's the climate emergency, optimistic scenarios put us between 1.5 and 2.4 degrees. while the lockdowns for the COVID-19 pandemic have been lifted, it has had a devastating impact on society and changed the way in which we work. And yeah, technology is becoming rapidly more complex. So those are the kind of contexts that people who are currently studying engineering will be entering into the workplace, and those who are already in the workplace are going to be facing those contexts closer to time as well.
And is it also in relation to when we talk about technology, and I think we've got some questions about that later on, but is it also a case of the technology helping with automating certain tasks as well? So being there as a supportive function, because often, especially when we talk about with an AI product, predictive maintenance, it's not there to replace, which is a common, hear it over and over again, but it's there to support, and obviously in this case supporting sustainability goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when we think about engineering, if all engineering was remembering formulas, analyzing information, then we're going to be designing software that will make us redundant. And in many areas, we have done that. So what is the role of the engineer within that context? And we need to kind of develop and foster this mindset of, which has been the traditional, how do you do something and when do you apply it, to really moving towards, actually, why am I doing this and what am I going to do within this context? So that's where kind of automation and AI and digitization, like it's not fully negative. It's not the evil entering the workplace, but it's actually how we work together with that and really critically reflect on what the role of engineering is within this kind of context of complex technology, helping to support and design. So when we are, do we ask how are we preparing engineers of today and tomorrow to collaborate across disciplines and cultures and prioritize human aspects within design, and also equip them with the technical skills to deliver new ideas and solutions, and to be able to rapidly and creatively adapt to the changes that they're going to be faced with today and tomorrow, that can be supported by AI and digitization and kind of predictive maintenance, rather than just handing over all the responsibility to them. Like, what is the critical reflection on the role of engineering within that context?
And I just want to take a step back, I guess, a little bit, and it's again comparing sort of a legacy approach to engineering, and why that might not be compatible with an organisation's sustainability goals, I guess. And then we can sort of look towards the steps they can sort of take. But maybe we just start what the problems currently organisations are facing.
So I think when we look at engineering, was pivotal in the Industrial Revolution. And the Industrial Revolution was really closely linked to dramatic economic growth. So there was this tying of like engineering and Industrial Revolution enabling economic growth, and that being an important relationship. But actually, when you look at sustainability goals, it's about impact in a different way. It's about impact on society. It's about impact on environmental systems. It's about really understanding the governance in this space. And it's about broader than economic goals. So I think the legacy approach to engineering, to an extent, needs to be about, the purpose of engineering needs to shift to being about producing globally responsible solutions that help society and our planet thrive. So if we think about what that really means is, I think when we go back, and that's obviously a simplistic take on things, it's a lot of complexity in the last 150 years in terms of the role of engineering and how it's developed. But my great-grandfather was an engineer in the early 1900s. The world he knew was fundamentally different. Women couldn't vote. We hadn't yet had the world wars. He wasn't digitally connected. There was a lot more order and obedience and reputation and hierarchy in terms of how things were done, because we didn't have automation. We didn't have these things yet. So you relied on lots of people being involved and working in kind of obedient ways to the way to make, manufacturing move or make things kind of happen. So I think now we need to think broader. We need to think creatively. We need to innovate towards actually maybe shifting away from some of those connections of what was designed on a concept based in the Industrial Revolution, to really think about, well, what are the practices we need today, because our context and to an extent our societal values have shifted so much since that. So, what is the manufacturing system we need today? Is it distributed? Is it actually not mass manufacturing? What is construction we need today? Is it about repurposing buildings more than just building new? What is the transport system we need today? Is it more than just, individualized transport? Is there a different way of? So it's about kind of really checking in and stepping back and thinking about, what is the role and responsibility of engineering to tackle the escalating greenhouse gas emissions, our destabilizing of our climate and biodiversity, and the fact that we're not meeting the needs of all people. And I think there's a huge amount of creativity in there. So I think it's about bringing that creative spark back in. I imagine in the early 1900s, it was quite a creative, ingenuity, let's create and invent things. Like that must have been quite a core part of the culture of engineering at that stage. Whereas now I think we need to bring that back in to really look at how do we shift towards practices that are going to last us for the next 10, 20, 50, 100 years. And how do we change them continuously to be better and better?
I guess the question is how do you do that? Maybe it's a nice open question to dive into. But what can organisations do to really focus in on that?
I think one thing I think shouldn't be underestimated is do what you said you would do. So sustainability strategies are quite ambitious and bold. They do tend to mirror the needs of today. We need companies to meet their own strategy. So if you said you're going to do something, let's do it. And even if that does mean having to be innovative about how you upskill your workforce, or it does mean about really, bringing in ways that enhance cultures within your business. You've done it before. You've done it for safety. We've done it for digital. This is the next step. So I think there's something about definitely doing what you said you would do. And I think celebrating all of the different roles in engineering. This is a multidisciplinary sport. This is not just about, I'm an engineer, JC's an engineer, but this is not just about the engineers. It's about really valuing the ecologists, the project managers, those with lived experience more within design teams and decisions that are made. So I think there's definitely something here about recognizing where your strengths are. And, if you've always had a certain group of people decide what's right for that design of that type of area, maybe try and experiment by broadening out and see what happens. So I think do what you say, do broaden and celebrate the different roles. And I think get involved with the fact that this is a shift and it's a transition and it's not going to be a switch overnight. So it's actively get involved in this. You can have change happen to you, or you can be involved in shaping something to be better. So I think, don't engage rather than being apathetic towards what's happening. We all have a responsibility. We're part of this profession. It is fundamentally a group of people who are in this profession. We all have a role to play. So kind of getting involved with the conversations and helping to shift it is amazing. Yeah. It's what's needed.
Absolutely. And so what's holding organisations back from really pushing this, thinking creatively, thinking outside the box? I mean, that's a stock phrase, isn't it? But yeah, just pushing the boundaries for this. Because again, what Jonathan was saying earlier, I mean, I think we all know, we all watch the news and read the newspapers and stuff. It's, that it is a climate emergency. So what is stopping organisations really, not taking it seriously, may take it more seriously, let's say?
I think I'm interested on Jonathan's take on this as well. But for me, it's the scale of the challenge, the complexity of it. It's quite easy to get quite overwhelmed by it. So I think there's something about, engineers wanting to know what will happen and have control over the outcome. We actually won't have control over what does a business look like if it really is globally responsible. That's yet to be determined. So I think it's about being a bit more comfortable with the unknown and believing in the potential of your people to work creatively in order to be driven to make that happen. So it's probably definitely a kind of relationship with discomfort. I think for me, there's also an element in terms of what holding people back is the busyness of the day-to-day. Not having the time to step back and actually go, gosh, things have moved and shifted quite a lot. And what does it really mean for us to declare a climate emergency? What does it really mean for us to act against that? So I think there's something about time and using time really well to be able to, yes, deal with the day-to-day pressures, but also to be able to step up and prepare for the years and decades ahead. Because, if you look at the trends reports, the world of work is going to change dramatically as well because of advancing technology. Really stepping back and thinking, actually, how are we navigating this? So I think providing more time and space for strategic thinking, but also for upskilling workforces. And then I think the final thing that's holding them back is holding some organizations back is like a feeling that this isn't relevant to engineering. Like this isn't us. We don't deal with the people bit and the planet bit. We deal with the tech. We deal with what we know. We deal with the maths that we can get right, and we know what's best. So I think there's something about embracing the fact that we're part of the solution, and also proud of the problem. So embracing that our role is connected to these things. Like engineering isn't separate to society. It literally has a real impact, whether or not you see the impact of your decisions or not. You're having an impact. So it's about like really grappling with, what does that look like in terms of leadership? And how do we get bold about the fact that we have this impact? Let's deal with that. And actually, how do we get to the point where we're bold about trying to minimize our negative impact and absolutely maximize our positive impact? So I think there's the need to go bold in terms of the steps that we take to do what we said we would do.
Yeah, Jonathan, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'm glad Emma went first because it gives me a bit more time to have a think.
That's good.
So last year in November 2022, we published a report called The Extent to Which Global Responsibility is Embedded into Engineering Practice. So we explored this topic with what it looks like with engineers in the built environment sector and highlighting the kind of an existing understanding of what global responsibility looks like, the urgency behind it, and started to explore some of the practical barriers that are holding back progress in the day-to-day. So that report's on our website, so I highly recommend going to check that out. And some of the kind of key practical barriers that came forward were, like Emma said, the navigating uncertainty and complexity in decision-making across design lives. It's very hard to think like what's happening 100 years down the line and what the implications of that, particularly when we're in this context where the impact and implications of our decisions are kind of rapidly and compoundly challenging. So the World Economic Forum's Global Risks Report really highlights going forward that the challenges we're going to be facing are environmental, technology, and societal, and rapidly increasing technology in nature. But not only that, they're highly intertwined, interconnected, and have real compounding effects on each other. So there's a relationship between these crises that they've coined it being a polycrisis. So navigating that complexity within the decision-making of a solution or design that might be 30, 50, 100 years down the line in society, building that resilience in and building that understanding the impact that it would have on society is a challenge in day-to-day practice. And having the time to consider that in day-to-day practice within the decision-making is a practical barrier. The other one that was kind of brought up was the kind of interpersonal aspect of engineering as well. Something that isn't really taught and spoke a bit earlier about is how do engineers speak to other people? It's like engineers traditionally in engineering education speak to other engineers. And if engineering was engineers doing engineering for engineers, then we actually miss a massive part of the engineering sector in society. So it's like there's the relationship between engineers and the client, who might not be an engineer. And also the decisions or the kind of thoughts that are coming back and forward might need somebody outside the kind of discipline silo of engineering. So there's that interpersonal relationship piece that is a bit of a barrier, and being able to advocate for different ideas and solutions within that relationship, either coming from the client or coming from the engineer, to kind of understand what opportunities to embed global responsibility as a day-to-day, because the different priorities within that relationship can create some tensions. Economics and financial considerations are always a kind of stark reality as well, bringing it within cost. But that advocacy and relationship piece is a challenge that engineers face day to day in bringing in global responsibility. And then finally, the kind of skills and competence and supportive opportunities within engineering company culture that can nurture or hinder bringing that in global responsibility into day-to-day practice and day-to-day decision making. some of the work that we do with higher education and in industry, we've started to explore like to actually create that culture shift and bring in global responsibility into your day-to-day. What does that look like? What is the importance, confidence, the willingness you actually attach to bringing that into your day-to-day practice? And what we find is that in both education and practice is that the importance is placed really, really high on the scale. The willingness to embed that is really, really high on the scale, but the confidence is always a little bit kind of shortfall. It kind of falls within that middle bit. We're not quite sure how to do this. And that's reflective of the stat that Emma mentioned at the start, of that 7% of engineering companies with a sustainability strategy believe they have the skills to deliver on that. So there is a little bit of a skills gap and competence gap that prevents bringing global responsibility into day-to-day. And then the final bit, which is maybe more a high-level one, so I went to see Oppenheimer at the weekend, and for those who haven't seen the film, Oppenheimer's known as the father of the atomic bomb, and the film mainly covers his role in the research and development of the atomic bomb in World War II. And there's a quote that kind of really stuck with me in lead up to today, which I think captures the kind of challenge, but also the need of that shift and challenge for the engineering sector, and really ensuring that humanity and the planet thrives. And it's a quote from the film. It says, "Just because we made the technology doesn't mean we have the responsibility for its use." And too often, engineering can focus on the really technical capacity or the functionality of a design, and the decision-making is left to somebody else, which is a real shame. So the sector and engineering community's strength as practical problem solvers can also be our weakness. Because the flip side of that is that our practical problem-solving strength is that we don't spend too much time reflecting on the philosophical questions about our role within the world and in society, when we have a substantial and incredible impact on shaping the world around us, both for the good and for the bad as well. We've had massive strides in health and society and in how we communicate and collaborate together that engineering has helped facilitate, but also engineering has contributed to some of the more unsustainable practices and emissions that we are facing with today. So that comes back to the critical reflecting on what our role is in the world, and actually, are we just the facilitators of technology, or do we actually have a role in stewarding its use?
Please like and subscribe on all major podcast channels, and find out more about Senseye Predictive Maintenance at Siemens.com.